Hello, welcome back to the second part of our 10th lesson. Again, let's keep going playing riddles and look at the picture on the screen, and I'll give you 5 seconds to think about it. All right, these pictures come from what we call the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution took place in the 18th century too, but it wasn't everything fructiferous and prolific, and it meant that everyone was happy because of the revolution. It was a revolution. It is worthwhile in history, but at the same time, if you take a look at the picture and you see these children there, all filthy and dirty everywhere, look at these faces, and if you look at these, the clothes they're wearing, and the picture on the left with that woman working in the mines, it seems to be very far from what I would call happiness. Let's see. The Industrial Revolution was different from the rest of the previous revolution at that time. It was a brand new revolution, both in its form and concept, and it began in the 18th century England. So far, the revolutions consisted of agitators, demonstrations, the clever use of diplomacy, or a general who led a conspiration to seize power. The Industrial Revolution had none of this. It was completely different. The revolution focused rather on the day-to-day housekeeping and goods production. So, bearing in mind our previous video, there was a breakup with the religious authority, with the monarchic and the nobility authority over the people. So they started to think about themselves. How can we make our life easier and more easygoing, let's say, and happy? So they started to develop a series of ingenious devices, machinery, and tools that changed radically the way of life and the standard of life of millions of people. So deep in its heart, the Industrial Revolution aim and purpose was noble, was good, but the consequences were not that good. Throughout the scientific discoveries and investigation, they started to develop new machinery. So we see there in the picture that until this time, manufacture was considered to make by hand, okay? Manufacere in the Latin translation. So in 1767, James Hargreaves developed this tiny jenny, okay, with the capacity of 8 to 10 threads of wool. After that, Richard Arkwright developed a roller machine with a superior capacity, but it's not specified here. And in 1879, Samuel Crompton developed the mule with the capacity of spinning 200 threads with one operator. In 1790, James Watt improvements made the steam engine as popular as wind and water mills. Until these times, let's say, nature had not been so manipulated. So we still use, let's say, the strength of the animals and the strength of the people, of the person. But after that, they started to develop new machinery and to use the forces of the nature in favor of humanity. Okay, so the domestic system changed into the factory system. Okay, it causes that some people who used to live in modest but green with open space, in houses with green and open space, had to move to a long run of houses with no green space at all. Okay, and it was the development of the capitalist class, which are a selected and small group of people had the monopoly of the means of production and the capital, the money. And it was the counterpart of the working class, right? So on one side, we have the capitalist class or the bourgeoisie, the apparition of the bourgeoisie, and the working class, which was the proletariat, okay? And with all these, the apparition of the socialism started by the hand of one man who was called Karl Marx, who was a German philosopher who moved to England and who lived during the Industrial Revolution there. And he wrote a masterpiece called The Capital and the Communist Manifesto. Okay, but this is for you to read in the chapters of modern times. It's on the bibliography. Please, if you need some support, some assistance, don't hesitate to call me or send me an email. See you next class. Bye bye.